Top Glove Corp saw its net profit for the third quarter of FY22 slump 82.53% quarter-on-quarter to 15.29 million ringgit, as it continued to be battered by the effect of the normalization in terms of demand and average selling prices for gloves following the transition into COVID-19 endemicity. Revenue, however, was flat at 1.46 billion ringgit. On a year-on-year basis, the glove maker's earnings were slashed by 99.25%, while revenue shrank by 64.52%. No dividend was declared during the quarter under review. Top Glove said the resulting softer performance occurred amid a convergence of headwinds, with production costs moving upwards due to global inflation and as the Russia-Ukraine conflict drove up crude oil prices. There were also the hikes in natural gas and electricity tariffs and the implementation of the new minimum wage policy. Still, average selling prices are declining at a far slower pace, and Top Glove Managing Director Datuk Lee Kim Miao believes the outlook for the glove industry is still promising, as gloves remain an essential item in the healthcare sector. At the close, Top Glove shares traded 3.39% higher at RM1.22 apiece, valuing the group at 10.01 billion ringgit. The combined wealth of tycoons on the 2022 Forbes list of Malaysia's 50 richest fell 10% from a year ago to $80.5 billion, about 353.92 billion ringgit. In a statement today, Forbes said that overall, 30 people on the list saw their wealth decline. Forbes said Malaysia's economy grew 5% in the first quarter of 2022, buoyed partly by a recovery in domestic demand. It pointed out that while the stock market dipped slightly in the past 12 months, currency fluctuations saw the ringgit tumble by some 6%. Business magnate Robert Kwok, who held on to his long-standing number one spot, saw his fortune shrink to $11 billion from $12.2 billion last year. Meanwhile, Hong Leong Company Malaysia Chairman Tan Sri Kwek Leng Chan was the biggest gainer in dollar terms and consolidated his position as Malaysia's second richest person with $10.1 billion, up from a net worth of $9.6 billion last year. Tan Sri Kun Po Kyong and his siblings, who control aluminium giant Press Metal Aluminium Holdings, remain in third position with $6.2 billion, nearly flat from a year ago. Rounding up the top five are Public Bank founder and chairman Tan Sri Teh Hong Piao at number 4 with $5.7 billion and Ananda Krishnan, whose holdings include stakes in Maxis and Bumi Armada, coming in at number 5 with $5 billion. Meanwhile, Malaysia's rubber glove makers, who were among last year's biggest winners, faced a stark reality check as demand for personal protective gear deflated. According to Forbes, the wealth of Kwan Kam Hon of Hartalega Holdings ranked number 11 with $1.9 billion, and Top Glove Corp founder Tan Sri Lim Pui Chai at number 14 with $1.4 billion saw the biggest fall in dollar terms. Husband and wife duo Datuk Sri Stanley Tai and Datin Sri Cheryl Tan of Supermax Corp, who rank number 45, saw the biggest percentage drop in their wealth, which fell by more than two-thirds to $340 million. Forbes said that including Kosan Rubber Industries Tan Sri Lim Kwang Sia at number 24 with $740 million and Riverstone Holdings co-founder Wong Teck Sun at number 30 with $565 million, the collective fortunes of these rubber glove tycoons were down by over $5.7 billion. Malaysia's jobless rate dipped to 3.9% in April 2022, from 4.1% a month earlier, as employers continued hiring. According to the Department of Statistics Malaysia, the number of jobless persons fell to 669,200 in March, to 649,300 in April, as economic activities flourished due to the reopening of the country's borders, in tandem with its transition to the COVID-19 endemic phase on April 1st. Meanwhile, the number of employed persons increased to 15.85 million in April, from 15.77 million a month earlier. At 3.9%, Malaysia's April unemployment rate is below the 4% level for the first time since the COVID-19 outbreak. Chief Statistician Datuk Sri Dr. Muhammad Uzair Mahidin said the labour force condition during the month strengthened further with a surge of 0.4% month-on-month to 16.5 million persons against 16.44 million persons in March. Accordingly, the labour force participation rate edged up by 0.2 percentage point to 69.4% compared to 69.2% in March. He said this was due to the continuous increase in employment, while the jobless rate remained on a declining trend. Petronas is allocating 60 billion ringgit for capital expenditure in FY22, almost double the 30.5 billion ringgit a year earlier, as it prepares for the resumption of business activities which were previously disrupted by COVID-19-linked curbs. And for the first time, the national oil giant is setting aside 10% of the allocation for non-traditional businesses such as specialty chemicals and solar energy. Petronas Chief Financial Officer Liza Mustafa said this at the virtual MIDF Conversations event. Of the 60 billion ringgit allocation, she said some funds will also be utilised to finance the proposed 1.54 billion euro, about 7.02 billion ringgit acquisition of Sweden-based specialty chemicals group Perstorp Holdings by Petronas Chemicals International. Looking ahead, Lisa said non-hydrocarbon-related income is expected to account for about 30% of Petronas' revenue. She added the group needs to have a target where a significant portion of the group's revenue over the next 5 to 6 years comes from something that is not directly related to oil and gas to safeguard Petronas from volatile crude oil prices, which have risen past $100 a barrel, partly due to supply concerns amid the Russia-Ukraine war. Shares in Tenaga Nasional slumped to a 9-year low amid broad-based selling pressure, which caused the benchmark FBM KLCI to close nearly 1% lower. Its shares settled at its intraday low of 8.79 ringgit, the lowest since October 2013, giving it a market value of 50.33 billion ringgit. It saw a total of 6.47 million shares exchanging hands. The utility giant's stock has been on a downward trend since touching a peak of 10.56 ringgit on August 30th last year. Since the beginning of the year, it has tumbled 5.9%. A check on Bloomberg shows there are 12 buy, 4 hold and 4 sell calls for the counter, with a consensus target price of 10.79 ringgit. Notably, Macquarie slashed its call on Tenaga Nasional today to underperform from neutral, while revising downward its target price to 7.60 ringgit from 8.90 ringgit previously. The group's dividend yield stands at 4.6%. In the first quarter of FY22, the group's net profit slipped 6.84% to 893.1 million ringgit due to higher tax expenses. Revenue grew 36.42% to 15.66 billion ringgit, mainly driven by the under-recovery position of imbalanced cost pass-through ICPT of 3.5 billion ringgit.